Hello there, and welcome to Murder Most British. I'm Zach.
Hey guys, welcome. I'm Rachel. Sorry, I have to laugh.
Stop laughing at me.
I have to laugh because he says it every time and it just makes me laugh. Hello there.
Hello there. Well,
I wonder if it makes you laugh as well.
Yes. Well, I am a little bit under the weather. Got a bit of a sore throat, but the show must go on.
It must. We can't not cover the cases. We really enjoy doing them, and you're not too bad at the moment.
Not too bad. If I sound a bit more husky than usual, then that's because I've got a bit of a sore throat.
Maybe listen to it at bedtime.
Yeah.
Mind you, I'll still be as loud as normal. So.
Yeah, you are quite
worry.
loud. But yeah. Anyways, we are going into a really crazy story this week. It's actually not too far. It's in Peterborough.
Yep.
Or Peterborough.
Peterborough. Peterborough. I've never actually been to Peterborough. That's probably one of the places I've never been. Just outside, I lived in Cambridgeshire. Obviously, Peterborough's Cambridgeshire, but I was more South Cambridgeshire. So
yeah.
But yeah, never ventured to Peterborough. It did back in the 90s. It did seem like quite a rough area. So. Obviously avoided it back in the 90s, but
is that like the other side of the tracks or something? That type
pretty
of thing?
much, sort of thing. But yeah, no, it's I'm not sure what it's like nowadays. But
anybody from Peterborough, let us know.
Yeah, let us know where you're from. Where you're listening from, let us know.
Yeah, we love it.
We do like finding out like where people are listening from, don't we? We have all over, which is great to know that we have listeners Romania. America.
Yeah, big ups to Romania. They've been representing. We were on the charts in Romania. I never thought in a million years that we'd that's
so
crazy.
Grateful for that. Let's see if we can chart anywhere else. Yep. Let's go.
Without all of you, we are nothing. So we really appreciate it. Thank you.
We do appreciate our listeners, definitely, no matter where they're from.
So before we begin, a small request from us.
If you do enjoy listening to our true crime stories, please give us a like, follow, and a 5-star rating would be great. Also, follow us on Instagram, TikTok at Murder Most British, and on Facebook at MMB Podcast.
You can also join us in the public crypt chat, our free Discord channel, where you can talk about cases, share theories, and read the latest news from the archive, and talk directly to us.
Yeah, definitely. Send us a message. But yeah. Your support in whatever platform you use, it really helps the archive grow and ensures that no story is ever forgotten. This episode discusses real events involving murder, attempted murder, serious violence, and mental health issues. Some material may be distressing to some listeners, so listener discretion is strongly advised.
So now, let's get to the story.
Well, nothing about the moments before these killings suggested what would follow. There were no arguments, no raised voices, no scenes that would later be remembered as warning signs. Each encounter unfolded in private, behind closed doors, away from witnesses, in places where violence was not expected. But what came next did not announce itself. It did not escalate, it did not rush. The attacks were quiet, deliberate and close. There was no struggle to interrupt them, no urgency to betray what was coming. Within 10 days, 3 men would be dead. And the woman responsible would later say she killed simply to know how it would feel.
Joanna Christine Dennehy was born in August of 1982 in St. Albans, Hertfordshire, and raised a few miles away in Harpenden, a place of clipped hedges, orderly streets, and lives that tended to move in straight lines. Her parents worked steady jobs. The household was calm, functional, unremarkable. There were no obvious fault lines. Nothing that marked her out as a problem waiting to surface.
Well, as a child, she fit easily into that world. She attended Roundwood Park School, where teachers noted confidence rather than difficulty. She played hockey and netball. She was sociable, comfortable in groups, and quick to draw attention without forcing it. At home, expectations were ordinary and forward-looking. University was assumed. Stability felt built in. The change did not arrive as a single moment. It crept in.
By her mid-teens, school attendance became irregular. Alcohol appeared, older boyfriends followed. At 15, she entered a relationship with a man 5 years older. Her parents tried to intervene, but then she ran away repeatedly. By 16, she was no longer living at home in any stable sense, moving between addresses, returning only intermittently. Drugs followed as well. So did volatility. Friends noticed how quickly her mood could turn, laughter giving way to hostility without warning.
Adulthood arrived early and without anchor. At 17, Dennehy became pregnant with her first child. Responsibility did not steady her. Accounts from those close to the relationship later described a near total absence of maternal attachment. Daily care fell largely to her partner, while she continued drinking, disappearing for days at a time, and drifting between reconciliations and conflict.
Man, that's not a good sign when she has no sort of maternal instinct or care. She's just like, well, you take care of the kid and I'm going to go out and have fun. And
I think, there's, in the beginning, I think there's a difference between, I think that maternal, some women have it straight away. I think some women, find it difficult to transition from being sole responsibility of themselves and being responsible for a newborn child. But
yeah,
I think it depends on how you are through your pregnancy. Maybe she didn't have that attachment from the pregnancy. I think, with me, I was a young mum, 20 years old, so still quite young. And, it wasn't until sort of 3 months in to the pregnancy that was when I started to feel, quite protective, maternal and getting prepared for what I had to do when the baby would arrive. So I think, it all depends on certain people's mindsets, but I think she seems, by the sounds of this case, that she was very much just wanted to focus on herself, despite having a child. Just carrying on doing what she wanted to do.
Yeah, I mean, she was very young, 17, that's a hard time to give up your independence, in a sense, to be like, oh, well,
and definitely,
you have to stop doing everything that you're doing because you need to now take care of this life that can't survive without you.
Yeah. And I think at 17, that's still quite a young person to have the mindset. They've got quite a child mindset in a sense, not fully matured. And obviously she might not have felt or known or wanted to choose to have the responsibility of raising this child. And setting aside, because it's compromise. You have to compromise, obviously, on the things that you normally do.
Yeah.
Stop that because it's not going to be good for a child situation, having a child.
Yeah. And then obviously he's older.
Mm-hmm.
He's 5 years older, so he's a bit more mature.
Yeah.
As well.
It definitely sounds she wasn't very mature at her 17.
Yeah.
So.
Anyways.
Anyway.
So back to the story. The relationship stretched on through her late teens and early 20s, marked by constant upheaval. The couple moved repeatedly through Luton, Milton Keynes, and later Wisbech, each relocation framed as a fresh start. None of them were. Alcohol and drug use were routine. Arguments were frequent. Police were called more than once. Those close to the relationship later described episodes of violence initiated by Dennehy herself.
A second child was born and the pattern did not change. Care remained inconsistent. Violence increasingly took place inside the home, often while the children were present. Drinking began early in the day. Self-harm became more visible. And whatever stability those moves were meant to create never took hold.
The relationship ended abruptly in 2009. During an argument, Dennehy produced a knife and drove it into the carpet, while her children slept nearby. For her partner, it was the moment clarity replaced hope. He took the children and left, back to his mother's. There was no return. That's
good
okay.
for him to make that decision.
Yeah,
to leave.
that's insane.
Mm.
I mean, if you rolled up and was like, had a big fucking knife and just slammed it into the carpet in front of me, I'd be like, peace out. See you later. That's enough for me.
Yeah, definitely a red flag. To react in that way is a red flag. I think, if it's just a verbal, shouting at someone saying like, I'm done this or whatever. But when it comes to actually, it's quite threatening, without raising it to him. It's quite an intimidating and threatening behaviour.
Oh, yeah. And then she's like self-harming, cutting herself.
Yeah.
And bleeding all over the place. And
who's to say he might have thought, oh my God, what if she's going to, hurt herself? I don't want to see this. The children shouldn't be seeing this. So yeah, up and go.
But then stabbing in front of him is like, well, are you going to stab him? Are you going to stab the kids? These are like anchors of my life that I don't need. He did.
You definitely have those thoughts going through your head, wouldn't you? You'd be questioning, okay, what the hell is going to happen? Removed himself and the children from the situation at that moment in time was the right decision for them. But after that break, Dennehy's life narrowed rather than stabilised. Contact with her children thinned, then faded altogether. What remained was not family life, but absence, punctuated by short-lived jobs, unstable housing, and escalating substance use.
Violence became more visible as she moved through her 20s. Former partners described drunken outbursts that tipped into assault. She self-harmed repeatedly, cutting into her arms and her body. Knives became familiar objects, carried, handled, and kept close without explanation. Her criminal record grew in fragments: dishonesty, disorder, breaches, short custodial sentences. Nothing decisive on its own, nothing that forced a reckoning.
And yet she was difficult to hold in place. Sentences ended, supervision lapsed, addresses changed. Each incident stood alone, an assault here, a breach there, never quite forming a single picture. To those who encountered her briefly, she seemed disruptive but manageable. The danger lay not in any one act, but in how closely they began to follow one another, a pattern that only becomes clear in hindsight. Around this time, another pattern took shape. Dennehy began telling stories.
Oh, goodness gracious. Yeah. Bringing up her legend, because she claimed she had been abused as a child. She said she had killed her father. She spoke of years spent in prison for violent crimes. But none of it was true. Her father was alive, and there was no evidence of abuse. Her upbringing had been ordinary. The stories were deliberate constructions, not to shock, but to draw people closer. They invited sympathy, curiosity, and obligation.
She moved easily between versions of herself. To some, she appeared fragile and in need of protection. To others, capable, witty, and assured. The shift was seamless. The effect was disarming. People lowered their guard. Private spaces opened. Familiarity replaced caution.
By the late 2000s, she was drifting across East Anglia, living in shared houses and temporary accommodation, supporting herself through casual labor, theft, and at times selling sex. Alcohol and drugs, they shaped her days. Her appearance changed: weight loss, scars, tattoos, layered over skin already marked by self-harm. Old friendships fell away. What remained were those who tolerated volatility and those drawn into the intensity she projected. Oh yeah, she tattooed that star on her cheek.
She done that herself?
She's done it herself.
Oh, me. I don't think I could do that.
Imagine tattooing yourself.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I mean, I'll probably go through far too many layers of skin. I'll be like, oh my God, I've gone too deep.
Yeah, you need that numbing cream.
Yeah.
Let me numb it up real fast.
Yeah.
Before doing that shit. That's crazy, man.
Actually, in my tattoos that I've got, I've never had numbing cream.
Well, you don't even have the numbing for when you have dental work.
No, I don't know.
That's wild.
Some people think that I enjoy the pain, but it's not a case of that.
You don't want to look like I did when I had some work done.
Yeah,
when we got onto Skype together.
it's so funny.
Just the whole side of my face was paralyzed pretty much.
And very droopy. So
yeah.
when he smiled, it was like only half of his lips sort of lifted up and
Yeah.
smiled, whereas the others were still the same.
It looked
face
like,
and
it
just-
looked like I had a stroke.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
We're not going to laugh about people
No.
having a stroke, but he definitely did look funny. So obviously I wouldn't have laughed had he have had a stroke.
Dude,
But
she was crying, laughing.
It was very funny. But yeah, so Peterborough suited that existence. It was a city defined by movement, transient work, informal housing, loose social ties. People arrived, stayed briefly, and disappeared. Short-term arrangements were common. So were acquaintances who knew little about one another's past. In that environment, Dennehy did not stand out as unstable, only as temporary. Disappearance did not immediately suggest danger.
By 2012, she was in regular contact with the criminal justice system. Convictions accumulated, community supervision followed, conditions were imposed, then ignored. Curfews were breached, addresses changed without notice, and oversight eroded, not through confrontation, but just avoidance.
Well, during this period, her language began to shift. She spoke more often about control, about detachment, about testing limits. Violence was framed not as anger, but as curiosity, something to be examined rather than feared. At the time, it was dismissed as provocation, another performance, another exaggeration.
Well, by early 2013, Dennehy was 30 years old. She was unemployed, estranged from her children, and moving between addresses in and around Peterborough. The structures that once constrained her, family, work, oversight, had worn away. What remained was access to people inclined to trust her, to knives she carried without thought, and to private spaces where no one expected harm.
In the weeks before March, those around her noticed a shift. The threats that she once delivered theatrically became quieter. Her mood sharpened. More tellingly, she was no longer reacting to events as they arose. She was arranging them, choosing who to see, where to meet, and how long to stay. Nothing about those plans felt urgent. That was what made them dangerous. When the violence came, it did not rise from confusion or chaos. It came from preparation.
The first man to die was Łukasz Słaboszewski. To all our Polish listeners, hopefully I got that right.
Yep. Sounds good to me.
Yeah. He was 30 years old, a Polish national living in Peterborough, working casually and keeping to a narrow circle of acquaintances. To those who knew him, later spoke of an open nature, of optimism, of an ease with trust. He avoided conflict. Nothing in his life suggested he was approaching danger.
Well, Łukasz met Joanna Dennehy only days before his death through mutual acquaintances. She moved with intention, presenting herself as attentive and affectionate, offering warmth that felt immediate and sincere. He believed that they were beginning something together, some sort of relationship. In messages to friends, he spoke of her with quiet happiness, telling one that, quote, life was beautiful. On the evening of the 19th of March of 2013, Dennehy invited him to visit her at 11 Rollston Garth, a house near the centre of Peterborough, where she had been staying.
CCTV later captured Łukasz walking toward the address at night, a small bag in his hand. It was the last confirmed image of him alive. There was no recorded argument and no sign of a prolonged struggle. Dennehy stabbed him once through the heart, killing him almost instantly. The violence was brief, contained, and unseen.
Very May.
He was all happy and
going there, thinking it's going to have a small bag. Is obviously thinking, oh, when they're going to be staying the night and have maybe just watch some movies.
He's like, oh, I got a girlfriend now, and he's far from home. That's just crazy.
Well, she did not hurry to rid herself of what she had done. Instead, Dennehy placed Lukash's body into a wheelie bin inside the house, where it remained while life outside continued as though uninterrupted. During this time, she used his mobile phone, answering calls and messages, telling those who contacted him that he had gone away. The calm continuation of routine was deliberate. By sustaining the illusion of presence, she delayed suspicion. He was not reported missing straight away. No immediate alarm sounded.
What happened next revealed something colder than just concealment. While the body was still in the bin, Dennehy brought a 14-year-old girl to the house and opened it to show her what was inside. Dennehy later denied this, but the judge found the girl's account so clear and compelling that he rejected Dennehy's denial entirely. It became an aggravating feature of the crime. Not just that she had killed Lukash, but that she displayed the aftermath to a teenager.
That's crazy. Imagine being 14 and someone's showing you a dead body that you've murdered in a wheelie bin.
Just that casual. Like, hey man, want to see something wild? And you're just like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
that's a dead person in there.
And I think a lot of killers, they're I would assume that they want to try to sort of like keep it secret. Do you know what I mean? So that they're not like got any witnesses to say that they've done this, and so they can try and get away with it. But she clearly
wanted to.
It's like she was showing off.
Yeah, she wanted to show off and be like, "Look what I did." And she was happy about it.
Yeah, so it shows that she's not got a care in the world that she's done that, whereas people are not afraid of being caught, because at the end of the day, if you were afraid of being caught for doing something like that, you wouldn't tell anybody, you wouldn't show anybody.
But I think that she possibly could have thought, well, this kid's going to be scared shitless and not going to say anything.
Who knows? I mean, we're trying to obviously get into a killer's mind, but we can't really sit there and fully 100% know exactly how she was thinking at the time and whatnot. But in the days that followed, Dennehy began planning disposal. With money she had borrowed from her landlord, Kevin Lee, she brought a Vauxhall Astra, specifically for that purpose. She and Gary Stretch travelled by taxi to collect it. Only when she was ready did she act. So Gary Stretch is one of her friends.
Yeah, I think they call him Stretch because he was like 7'2". He's just a massive
really
dude.
Tall. Well, later, Dennehy and Stretch drove north of Peterborough, leaving the city lights behind and heading into a rural area known as Thorny Dyke.
Thorny Dyke was chosen with care. It was remote and poorly lit. Flat farmland cut through the drainage ditches, running alongside the quiet roads. It was land Stretch knew well from his earlier years. There, they tipped Lukash's body into a ditch and drove away, believing it would remain undiscovered.
What followed marked a shift. Violence that had previously existed as talk or threat had now been enacted, and the act did not end it. There was no retreat into ordinary life, no attempt to put distance between herself and the killing. Instead, preparation, action, and disposal began to merge into a single process. The space between decisions shortened, and 10 days later, Dennehy killed again.
Her second victim was John Chapman, 56, a Royal Navy veteran who lived alone in a bedsit room at 38 Byfield, a property Dennehy had recently moved to. Chapman struggled with alcoholism and lived quietly, his days governed by habit. He had expressed unease to others about Dennehy's behavior, describing her as volatile and unsettling. But those concerns were voiced casually, never formally raised. They lingered as discomfort rather than warnings.
In the early hours of Friday the 29th of March of 2013, which was Good Friday, Dennehy went to Chapman's room. There was no argument. He had been drinking heavily and most likely had been asleep. She stabbed him once in the neck, severing the carotid artery, and 5 times in the chest. 2 of the wounds penetrated the heart, one with enough force to pass through the breastbone. There were no defensive injuries. His blood alcohol level was around 4 times the legal driving limit. The injuries were rapidly fatal.
This is where I'm saying that it was like opportunity, like of vulnerable victims. So she lured Lukasz around, saying, "Hey, let's be naughty or whatever, like we're going to be together." And he's not thinking anything other than, "Hey, I've got a new girlfriend. Life is beautiful," and then she just turns and bam, he just didn't know what hit him. And then Chapman, she just went, "Oh, he's passed out. I'm drinking. I'm just going to go stab him." Easy.
Yeah, I think this
Easy
second
kills.
one, I think this second killing seems very much, not so much of a premeditation, more of a spontaneous, oh, he's fell asleep, I'm going to go and do this. It's kind of like a more spontaneous type of killing that she's done.
But it's soft victims in a sense of like she was able to do them easily without fighting. Without fighting back. You've got an ex-Navy man there. He's probably going to be strong.
Yeah.
If she tried to confront him when he was awake and coherent, she probably wouldn't have been able to do that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, back to the story. When Leslie Layton, another resident of the building, encountered Chapman's body later that morning, his reaction was not to raise the alarm. Instead, a photograph of the corpse was taken on his mobile phone at 7:32 a.m., an image later deleted. Layton never gave evidence to deny taking it, and the judge said he was sure that Layton both took and deleted the photograph, treating it as a morbid souvenir rather than a moment of shock. That's gross.
That's
Sorry.
crazy. Your friend, because he was friends with Dennehy. So he's then gone in there.
But you're living with the guy, and your first reaction to seeing his dead body is, whoop, I need to get my phone out and take a picture.
But then delete it,
So, maybe I shouldn't have took that. I better go delete it. What the fuck is it? That's just craziness.
Guy clearly wasn't thinking of that time in the morning. Well, later that same day, Dennehy contacted Gary Stretch again. And with Layton's involvement, Chapman's body was carried down from the top floor of the building, loaded into the Astra and driven out to Thorney Dyke.
Oh, do you know when she contacted him, do you know what she messaged him? She texted him.
Oh, did she? Do you know what
she said? Oops, I did it again.
Oh, no. Like a quote from Britney Spears' song.
Oh, my God.
Good God. Honestly, well, he would have known exactly what she meant by that.
Yeah.
Well, the body was dumped in the same ditch where Lukasz already lay undiscovered. Returning to the site demonstrated a willingness to reuse the same method of disposal. And later on in the same day of the 29th of March, after killing the second victim, Dennehy killed for the third time.
So her final victim was Kevin Lee, 48, a local landlord that we spoke about earlier, and he was also a property developer. Lee had provided Dennehy with accommodation, money, and work. Over time, he became emotionally involved with her, encouraged by stories she told of childhood abuse and a violent past, stories that were not really true. He believed he was helping someone damaged, but redeemable. The belief flattered him. It also left him exposed.
That afternoon, Dennehy lured Lee to 11 Rolleston Garth. She told him she intended to dress him up and rape him, something Lee mentioned to a friend less than an hour before leaving to meet her. He arrived expecting consent. Instead, Dennehy stabbed Kevin Lee 5 times in the chest. The wounds penetrated both lungs and the heart. Unlike her previous victims, Lee showed signs of attempting to defend himself. He died at the scene.
So yet again, it just lured in a sense of safety and then surprised. It was just that surprise attack every time.
And that dressing him up and raping him is something that he was consenting to?
I think it was just sort of a kink play type of thing. I ain't here to kink shame nobody.
No, 100%.
That's that.
Each their own, but
to each their own, and whatever you do is whatever you do, and with consenting adults. But yeah, I mean, I think it was just a part of what they did.
Like role play stuff.
Yeah. So with another body now requiring removal from the address, Dennehy again turned to Stretch and Layton. Kevin Lee's body was dressed in a black sequin dress belonging to Dennehy and driven to a second rural location near Newborough, just outside of Peterborough.
Well, that's quite a humiliating thing for her to do. Leave him in this sequin dress and dumped him like that.
I think it's just humiliation as well, and she was getting a kick out of it because she's sick.
Well, there, it was dumped in a drainage ditch. When it was found, Lee's body had been left or deliberately positioned with his naked buttocks exposed. This was a final act of humiliation, consistent with the sexual and sadistic nature of the killing.
Yeah, that's just,
Poor guy.
So not only did he, get killed, and that he had to, his body was positioned that way to just be humiliated, and that's just so disgusting. Especially
if, not many people are going to know what you like behind the closed doors, in the bedroom, and for her to do that is just so humiliating for him and his family and his friends, Yeah. It's horrible.
Yeah. Well, Lee's Mondeo was then driven away and set alight on a waste ground near Yaxley, deliberately chosen to be as far from the dumping site as possible. When Kevin Lee was reported missing, the bodies of Lukash and Chapman had not been found. 3 men from different walks of life had been killed within 10 days, and no public link had yet been made. Dennehy left Peterborough that weekend with Gary Stretch. As they traveled south, she spoke openly about the killings, not as something finished, but as something ongoing. The violence did not recede with distance. It traveled with her. On the afternoon of the 2nd of April 2013 in Hereford, she attacked 2 strangers chosen at random.
The first was Robin Bereza, a retired firefighter stabbed without warning in the street. Minutes later, Dennehy encountered John Rogers, who was walking his dog. There was no arguments, no exchange that might later be framed as provocation. She approached him calmly and stabbed him at close range. Rogers survived and later described not just the attack but Dennehy's manner as it happened.
As he lay bleeding, Rogers said Dennehy looked at him and remarked on what she saw. She noted that he was bleeding and said she would do more. The words were not shouted, they were not hurried, they were delivered with the same calm control that marked the attack itself. It was not a threat, it was an assessment.
Dennehy then walked away, leaving Rogers injured in the street. Both he and Bereza survived due to rapid medical treatment. Thank God. The violence followed the same pattern seen before, deliberate, close and controlled, but now stripped of familiarity or personal connection. What had once been contained within private spaces had become public.
Yeah, that was crazy because I believe Rogers was stabbed like 30 times.
Jesus.
And he survived.
Lucky guy.
Tough guy. Like, absolute miracle that he survived.
And definitely swift, response from the medical paramedics and stuff. So, yeah, fantastic that they both survived.
Yeah. But within less than a fortnight, 3 men were dead. 2 others had narrowly survived. The killings had not escalated in response to pressure or pursuit. They had simply just continued. What began behind closed doors had spilled out into the open and was no longer contained. Now she's going on a spree.
She's going on a little rampage there.
Yeah.
The hunt did not begin with bodies. It began with absence. On the evening of Friday the 29th of March 2013, Kevin Lee had failed to return home. His movements were predictable, his routines familiar. When he did not answer calls, concern grew quickly. By the following morning, police were notified. What initially presented as a missing person inquiry began to gather weight.
Almost immediately, details unsettled that assumption. Lee's car was found burned out on waste ground near Yaxley, deliberately destroyed and abandoned far from where he had last been seen. His mobile phone was still active, but messages and calls sent from did not sound like him. They were brief, evasive, wrong in tone. When officers traced the activity, it led not to Lee, but to Dennehy. Dennehy could not be found. She had left Peterborough without explanation. What had begun as concern hardened into suspicion.
Well, on the Saturday, the 30th of March of 2013, Kevin Lee's body was discovered in a drainage ditch near Newborough. He had been stabbed to death the previous day and deliberately dumped in a remote rural location. The investigation was no longer about finding a missing man. It was now a homicide inquiry, and its central figure was already gone.
As officers worked backwards through Lee's final moments, another absence became impossible to ignore. John Chapman, a tenant living at 38 Byfield, a property owned by Lee and occupied by Dennehy, had not been seen since the early hours of Good Friday. At that stage, he was not yet considered a murder victim, but he was missing, and the overlap was troubling for the police.
But the pattern was still incomplete. One confirmed murder, one missing man, a suspect who had vanished. Progress came not through revelation, but through accumulation. Phone records, CCTV fragments, witness recollections that overlapped briefly and then fell away. Each piece on its own explained little, but together they began to close in.
At the center of it all was Joanna Dennehy. Kevin Lee had been her employer, housed her, and lent her money. John Chapman lived in the building she occupied. In the days before his disappearance, witnesses recalled tension and threats. Dennehy was not yet named publicly as a suspect, but internally, the search had narrowed.
Yeah, you would definitely sort of think, well, hang on a minute. If not a suspect, at least a witness.
Yeah,
she might have witnessed something.
Some dots are connecting there.
Yeah. Well, what investigators did not know yet was how much help she was receiving. For 2 nights, Dennehy and Gary Stretch were sheltered by Robert Moore, a man the judge would later describe as besotted, willing to lie to police even knowing murders had been committed. Those nights mattered. Each day out of sight widened the distance between violence and accountability.
Early on Tuesday, the 2nd of April 2013, the investigation took an abrupt and dangerous turn. Police in Hereford reported 2 men found bleeding in the street, stabbed minutes apart. Both described the same attacker, a woman with a knife, calm, deliberate, and unhurried. The attacks appeared random. The victims were unconnected.
As we said earlier, the men were identified as Robin Barazer and John Rogers. When their accounts were shared with detectives in Cambridgeshire, the similarities could not be dismissed. The weapon, the approach, the lack of provocation, whatever had begun in Peterborough had not ended there. For investigators, the Hereford attacks changed everything. The violence was no longer confined to private spaces or personal relationships. It was public, mobile, and escalating. From that moment on, understanding what had already happened mattered less than stopping what might happen next.
Police forces across England were circulated with Dennehy's details. Officers were warned she was believed to be armed and dangerous. CCTV from petrol stations and roadside cameras traced the vehicles Dennehy and Stretch were already using as they moved south, including the Vauxhall Astra later used in Hereford, passing through the Midlands and into Herefordshire. Each confirmed sighting narrowed the window and heightened the risk.
As that trail was reconstructed, further details emerged. Dennehy and Stretch had committed burglaries while on the run, moving through Norfolk and into Herefordshire. At a flat near the Welsh border, they mixed with other criminals. One man later told the court he was not a willing passenger when the Astra set off for Hereford. The judge accepted that account and accepted that Stretch had been carrying a handgun at the time, disposing of it before the journey continued. The violence, it became clear, was not a reaction to pursuit. it travelled with it.
On the afternoon of the 2nd of April, a few minutes after the second Hereford attack, Dennehy was arrested. Gary Stretch was detained shortly afterwards. There was no resistance, no confusion. The immediate threat ended as suddenly as it had emerged. And they were quick. They were like, boom, 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 here it is. We got him. You know, they were tracking him and all that shit,
I
right?
think
Like
the
right away.
coordination between the forces, of the different areas, obviously following the CCTV footage of the car and stuff, that was really quick.
It was really, really fast.
That was really quick. Very good. With Dennehy in custody, the investigation shifted from pursuit to reconstruction. The 3rd of April of 2013, a farmer working land near Thorney Dyke discovered 2 bodies in a drainage ditch. They were identified as Lukash and John Chapman. Officers who dealt with Dennehy noted her composure. She appeared alert, calm, fully aware of her surroundings. There was no attempt to flee, no visible distress, no confusion about why she had been stopped. She behaved as though the outcome had already been settled.
As the evidence was gathered and timelines were fixed, the picture resolved with speed. Digital records, witness accounts, physical findings reinforced one another. What had first seemed sort of chaotic now formed a single, uninterrupted sequence of intent.
By November 2013, the investigation phase was complete. Detectives had established who had been killed, how, where, and where the bodies had been taken, and who had helped to move and conceal them. There were no gaps left that required conjecture. For the police, the hunt was over. What remained, though, was the reckoning.
Yep, gotta go to court.
Yep.
Gotta face the man. That day was on the 18th of November, 2013, at the Central Criminal Court, the Old Bailey in London. Joanna Dennehy entered guilty pleas to 3 murders, 2 attempted murders, 3 counts of preventing the lawful and decent burial of bodies. Pleas were delivered clearly, without hesitation. The judge asked whether she understood what they meant. Dennehy said she did.
Before when she was first arrested, I saw footage of her in the custody suite of the police station and that. And she actually was flirting with the police officers. Like, she literally did not care that she'd been arrested. And, she was just...
She was happy as Larry.
Yeah.
It was like exhilarating for her to... She's like, yeah.
It's the attention. It's like, oh, I'm
famous now.
Yeah.
That's what I do believe she was like talking to the police officers. Like, you'll read about it in the paper tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
She wanted that notoriety.
Yeah. She didn't fear that she'd been arrested for these crimes. Going back to the court, the case had been prepared for a lengthy trial. Instead, it collapsed inward almost as soon as it had begun. Dennehy's decision ran contrary to legal advice, but she showed no uncertainty. As the indictments were read aloud, she interrupted to correct the pronunciation of her name. A small assertion of control in a process that no longer required persuasion. She's trying to correct them and be like, hey, hang on a minute. It's like, if I was stood in court, they can call me what they like. You know what I mean? I want to go to correct them. I'm like, oh
my name is pronounced this way, actually.
Yeah. Deary me.
So while Dennehy's pleas and sentencing were dealt with at the Old Bailey, proceedings involving her accomplices were heard separately at Cambridge Crown Court. She was going by a video link for the Old Bailey, and also she had assessments of psychiatric, which confirmed she suffered from severe personality disorders, including antisocial personality disorder, not from any mental illness that diminished her responsibility. She was fully capable of understanding her actions and the harm that they had caused. She knew what she was doing. She knew it was wrong.
With the facts no longer in dispute, prosecution set out the sequence already accepted by the court. Between 19th and the 29th of March 2013, Dennehy murdered Lukash, John Chapman, and Kevin Lee, stabbing each man at close range. She enlisted Gary Stretch and Leslie Layton to assist in moving and concealing the bodies. On the 2nd of April 2013, she and Stretch had travelled to Hereford, where she stabbed 2 strangers chosen at random.
Addressing the court, the prosecution rejected any suggestion that the killings were driven by panic, provocation, or desperation. They were described by the prosecution and accepted by the court as acts of gratification. The attempted murders in Hereford were not treated as a break from the earlier violence, but as its continuation, violence unbroken by geography, exposure, or consequence.
Well, central to sentencing when Dennehy's own account of motive. During her psychiatric assessment, she described the first killing as a test, an attempt to see how she would feel. She said that once she had done it, and I quote, "It got Moorish."
Oh God,
what a word!
She did the Super Hans, didn't she? Wasn't it Peep Show?
Mm-hmm.
When Super Hans was like, "What are you doing?" "I'm doing some crack." So it's a bit Moorish. I think it was crack. I don't know.
I don't remember.
What a great show. Super Hans was fucking hilarious.
The remark was cited in court as evidence of deliberate escalating violence rather than impulsive loss of control. It stood alone, unsoftened by context or regret. "It got Moorish," is what she said.
Got a bit Moorish.
I mean...
Crazy. Quoting
dearie me.
Super Hans. Ugh. On the 28th of February 2014, Mr. Justice Spencer passed sentence. In his remarks, he described Dennehy as, quote, "a cruel, calculating, selfish, and manipulative serial killer." He rejected any suggestion that the murders were spontaneous or the product of emotional instability. Each killing, he said, involved planning. One involved sexual and sadistic conduct. Taken together, along with the attempted murders and the deliberate concealment of the bodies, the seriousness was exceptionally high.
Well, imposing a whole life order, the judge was explicit about his reasoning. The sentence given was not based on speculation about rehabilitation or future release, but on punishment. The law required him to assess whether the seriousness of the offending was so extreme that justice demanded Dennehy remain in prison for the rest of her life. And he concluded that it did.
Yep. She's only a handful of women that have gotten a whole life.
Yeah, it's not many in the UK.
Yeah. The sentence meant that Dennehy would never, ever be released. She also got 2 life sentences for the 2 attempted murders and concurrent sentences for the 3 offenses of preventing lawful burial. The structure mattered less than the conclusion, custody, for life.
Well, her accomplices were sentenced the same day. Gary Stretch received life imprisonment for the 2 attempted murders with a minimum term of 19 years, alongside concurrent sentences for preventing the lawful burial of bodies. Leslie Layton was sentenced to 14 years imprisonment, 10 years for concealing the bodies, with a consecutive 4 years for perverting the course of justice. Robert Moore, who admitted harbouring Dennehy and Stretch while knowing murders had been committed, received 3 years in prison.
The court rejected any suggestion that those who assisted Dennehy had acted under coercion. Fascination, loyalty, and self-interest were accepted as the motives, not fear. No mitigation was advanced that reduced the seriousness of the crimes. No expression of remorse was accepted. No explanation softened responsibility. As Dennehy was led from the dock, she showed little reaction. No apology was offered, and no appeal followed.
Well, the courtroom emptied quietly. Outside, the significance of the sentence was already understood, not because it had been imposed on a woman, but because it had been imposed for killings that served no purpose beyond the act itself. Inside, the remaining formalities were completed in a case that required no verdict.
So after sentencing, Joanna Dennehy was taken into custody within the high-security prison estate. She resides in Bronzefield. She entered under restricted conditions reserved for prisoners assessed as posing an exceptional risk. Her whole life order meant that there would be no parole hearings and no scheduled prospect of release. From the outset, prison authorities did not regard her as someone whose risk might diminish with time. She was treated as a problem to be contained indefinitely.
Well, Dennehy was placed in segregation while still on remand, and that separation and segregation continued after her conviction. The isolation was not presented as retribution. It was framed as control, a measure taken in response to the danger that she was assessed as, posing to staff and to other prisoners.
Oh, yeah. I mean, she's sitting there talking about how killing was a bit moreish, like...
Yeah, that and just,
she's probably going to go do it again.
Randomly being a kind of off the cuff, or she just felt like doing it sort of situation. Who's to say that she wouldn't then do that? So they had to protect, obviously, the staff and other prisoners. So
yeah, like filing down a toothbrush and stabbing someone with it, you got to protect people. So in 2016, Dennehy challenged those conditions in the High Court. Through her lawyers, she argued that the prolonged segregation amounted to unlawful solitary confinement and a breach of her human rights. She described herself as distressed and vulnerable, claiming that isolation had worsened her mental health and exacerbated her history of self-harm.
I think there is supposed to be a limit on how much time somebody's supposed to be segregated by themselves, because yes, it does affect people's mental health.
I mean, at some point you have to be able to be like, okay, hey, we have to try to test it out and see how she will do in general population, and if she acts up, then she's going to go back in.
Yeah, I think they would have had, more tighter sort of like having officers actually be consistently looking and watching her, had they sort of test her in the general population. So,
yeah.
But, so I do get that, there's probably is some truth to her claiming that the isolation worsened her mental health. But it's the risk, how high is that risk?
It's weighing that, hey, do we want people to get hurt or keep her segregated?
Mm-hmm.
But at some point you have to try to give her some sort of freedom.
And I think it'd be the lawyers that would come up, and inform her of all this human rights and kind of stuff like that. Because, a lot of people, we only know the basics of what our human rights are. I don't think we know every little detail about what could go against our human rights. But the government's response set out why the prison service had taken such an uncompromising position. Lawyers had told the court that a written escape plan had been discovered in Dennehy's cell. According to the submissions, the plan involved killing a female prison officer to obtain her keys and using her fingerprints to defeat biometric security systems. Dennehy was placed on the escape list and required to wear an escape suit. Police investigated the allegations but took no further action.
Whoops. Yeah, her plan was...
I wonder what these escape suits look like.
Yeah, but her plan was to cut one of their fingers off.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, to cut her finger off and then use it as a biometric. Yeah. But the court accepted that part of her segregation had been technically unlawful due to failures in authorization. It rejected the claim that the confinement itself was unjustified. The judge ruled that Dennehy's segregation was necessary and proportionate given the nature of her offending and the continued risk she was assessed as posing. No damages were rewarded.
Beyond the courtroom, Dennehy's life in custody attracted sustained media attention. Coverage focused on her behaviour in prison, her correspondence, and relationships formed while incarcerated. Prison authorities declined to comment on individual cases, and no subsequent judicial ruling altered her position. Well, outside the courtroom, the details faded. The name remained, though. Dennehy became shorthand, referenced more often than examined. What endured was not comprehension, but discomfort. For the families of Lukasz, John, and Kevin, there was no abstraction at all. Their loss did not transform into lessons or meaning. Kevin's widow later simply said, quote, "You don't understand it, you just learn to live beside it."
In professional study, the case is cited for the same reason. It's not because it can explain the violence, but because it exposes its limits. Instrumental violence without instrument action without reason, no remorse offered, and nothing to resolve.
And what remains is not mystery, but absence. No motive to uncover, no story to complete, only consequence. That is the legacy. Not notoriety and not understanding, but unease. A case that reached the edge of explanation and stopped. The law reached its limit, the violence ended, the consequences did not.
Well, that was the story of Joanna Dennehy and her crimes. Absolutely crazy.
That's a crazy case. Just the randomness of it. You know, she grew up seemingly ordinary, normal young girl, kind of like towards leaving school.
Well,
went
she
a little bit off the rails with doing the drugs and alcohol.
Well, with like her family and that, I thought she was gonna be like a lawyer and shit. It was
for all accounts, from what I've read, she was quite a smart person.
Yeah.
So it is a shame that there's a lot of lives in this case that have really been affected.
Yeah.
But obviously, as we always say, our thoughts are always with the victims and their families and their friends.
Yep, 100%. I just can't believe, it's so crazy because usually when we have cases, it's like they killed for a reason.
Yeah,
they did it for something.
When you get cases that there's no reason for it, there's not been any arguments. They've not been, someone's trying to steal something and they've accidentally, lashed out and someone's died that way.
Like a crime of passion.
Quite hard to understand that there's people out there that just doing it.
They just want to do it for fun.
You know?
They like how it feels and whatever. It's
and obviously
insanity.
not having any diagnosis of, say, schizophrenia and things like that. She was assessed and was only found to have had the personality disorder. So, but not everybody with these disorders will go out and commit murders.
Just like with schizophrenia. Not all people like that are going to go out and do stuff like that. They get help and they get on medication. And she just didn't give a shit about any of that. She didn't want help. She didn't want to reform. She just wanted to do her own thing.
She definitely seemed like a self-centered, just cared about herself.
Yeah.
Obviously, somewhere out there now, her children are growing up without her and, we feel for them as well.
Well, I think it's mostly like she was just out for herself and what she wanted and how she felt about things. And she's like, I really want to know what it's like to kill people. And what is that? And then she got a taste for it.
No care and empathy for anybody else, is there? Definitely. That was a crazy case.
Craziness, man. All right. Well, anyways, so if you'd like to support what we do here in the archive, please take a moment to follow the show and leave us a 5-star rating because that would be absolutely amazing. It takes like 30 seconds. Just boom, boom, boom. Give us a 5-star. It helps also other people to find us and discover the stories that we tell and keeps the archive growing. Share the podcast with someone who loves true crime. You're like, hey, man.
Have you heard this?
Have you heard this before? That really, really, really makes a huge difference. And we really appreciate everything.
Very much so.
We really appreciate everyone doing it and telling people about us.
As you already know, but I will say again, you can always follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Murder Most British and on Facebook at MMB Podcast.
Do it.
And if you want to chat with us directly and other listeners, come and join us on the Public Crypt. It's our free Discord space where we will discuss cases, theories, updates from the archive.
Yes, come and chat with us. That would be amazing. I'd love to chat to people and be like, what do you think? What do you think about this case? But everything you need to know, socials, Discord, and more, is in our link tree in the description
below.
Yes, it's in the description below with the play button. Yes.
Well, until next week, stay safe and stay curious.
Well, bye-bye.
Take care, guys.